The day my wife called me her personal service package, I did not cry, collapse, or stare dramatically out a rainy window like some abandoned golden retriever in a sad commercial. I just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in 7 years, I saw the difference between being loved and being used with good lighting. For most of my marriage, I thought I was a good husband, not a perfect one. I was not carved from marble by the gods of emotional maturity. I forgot laundry in the washer. I once bought almond milk when Claire specifically asked for oat milk, which, according to her face, was basically a war crime. But I showed up. That was my thing. Claire needed coffee before work. I brought coffee. Claire's car was making a weird noise. I checked it. Claire forgot her charger, her jacket, her lunch, her entire sense of reasonable timing. I helped. Not because I was weak, not because I had no spine. I did it because I loved my wife, and when you love someone, helping them feels natural. At least, it does in the beginning. Back then, Claire used to smile when I helped. "Thank you, babe," she would say, kissing my cheek. "You saved me." And I liked that. Sue me. A man enjoys feeling useful to the woman he married. I brought my wife iced coffee and felt like a hero with a rewards card. In the early years, it was balanced. She helped me too. She supported my late nights at work, listened when I complained about clients, and once drove across town because I had food poisoning and needed medicine. That was marriage. Messy, tiring, occasionally ridiculous, but mutual. Then Claire met her friends. And by friends, I mean a small committee of women who seemed to believe men were not people, but poorly trained household appliances with wallets. There was Cindy, who treated every relationship like a power contest where somebody always had to win. Megan, who said things like, "A real man provides comfort," while somehow never providing anything except opinions and half-empty wine bottles. And Tessa, who had been divorced twice and spoke about husbands the way farmers talk about stubborn mules. At first, I did not care. Claire could have friends. Obviously, I was not her prison guard. I had my own life, my own work, my own hobbies, and enough common sense not to panic every time my wife had brunch. But after a few months with them, Claire changed. Small things first. She stopped asking and started expecting. "Can you pick up dinner?" became, "Pick up dinner." "Would you mind driving me?" became, "You need to drive me." And my personal favorite, "If you love me, you will do it." That sentence should come with a siren. The first time she said it, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I genuinely thought she was joking. She was not. The transformation did not happen overnight. That is the dangerous part. If somebody walks into your house and punches you in the face, the problem is obvious. But when disrespect arrives one tiny piece at a time, it dresses itself like normal life. One day it is, "Can you stop by the store?" Then, "Why didn't you stop by the store?" Then eventually, "I cannot believe I even have to ask." That was Claire's evolution, or maybe devolution. Hard to say. At first, I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt because life gets stressful. Work stress, bills, exhaustion. Marriage is not a Disney movie where two attractive people slow dance through tax season. So when Claire became sharper around the edges, I ignored it. When she rolled her eyes because I forgot to grab sparkling water, I ignored it. When she sighed dramatically because I was 15 minutes late picking her up, I ignored it. When her friends laughed and called me domesticated, I laughed too. Because married people tease each other, right? Then came the first moment that genuinely irritated me. It was a Thursday night. I remember because Thursdays were brutal at work. End-of-week reports, client reviews, everybody suddenly remembering problems they should have mentioned on Monday. I had fallen asleep on the couch around midnight with my laptop still open on my chest when my phone exploded beside my face. Claire. 1:13 a.m. I answered immediately because nobody calls at 1 in the morning with good news. "Claire!" Music blasted through the speaker. People yelling, glasses clinking. "Bobby," she said, dragging the word like she was auditioning to be annoying professionally. "Can you do me a favor?" I sat up slowly. "You okay?" "Yeah, obviously." "Good start. What happened?" "So, Cindy is super tired and doesn't want to Uber alone." I blinked. "You called me at 1 in the morning because Cindy needs a ride?" "She's had drinks, so call her a taxi." Claire sighed like I was failing a very simple intelligence test. "Ethan, come on." There it was. That tone. Not asking. Expecting. I rubbed my face. "Claire, I have work in 6 hours. And I'm exhausted." Another sigh, louder this time. "You know what? Forget it." Every married man knows those words never mean forget it. They mean you will pay for this emotionally in installments. I stayed silent for a second. Then I looked at the clock again. 1:16 a.m. 3 hours earlier, I had been finalizing a presentation for a client worth more money than my first apartment. And now I was debating whether I should become an unofficial nighttime chauffeur for a woman named Cindy, who once described me as surprisingly trainable. "Where are you?" I asked. Claire immediately brightened. "See? Magic." The club was downtown, naturally, because the universe enjoys comedy. I drove 25 minutes through half-empty streets while listening to drunk people scream outside bars like raccoons fighting over garbage. When I arrived, Cindy climbed into the back seat dramatically. "Oh my God," she announced. "Your husband actually came." Claire laughed. "Of course he came." Something about the way she said it bothered me. Not affectionate, not appreciative, confident. Like a person pressing a button on a machine they already trusted would work. Cindy leaned forward between the seats. "You're lucky," she told Claire. "Most men would complain." "I trained him early," Claire replied casually. They both laughed. I smiled, but something cold moved quietly through my stomach. I told myself I was overthinking it. That is another classic husband mistake. You hear something disrespectful, your instincts immediately react, and then your brain rushes in like an unpaid defense attorney. She did not mean it like that. They were joking. "You are tired. Do not make drama out of nothing." Meanwhile, the nothing is slowly building a summer home inside your marriage. The next few weeks only got worse. Claire started volunteering me for things without asking first, not discussing, not suggesting, announcing. We would be halfway through dinner when she would casually say, "Oh, by the way, Ethan's taking Megan to the airport Friday morning." And suddenly 4 women would turn and smile at me like I was the restaurant valet. The first time it happened, I corrected her. "Friday morning?" I asked. "I have work." Claire gave me a look. Not angry, worse, embarrassed, like I had broken character in front of an audience. Megan sipped wine beside her. "It's okay if he can't." That fake politeness people use when they absolutely expect you to do it. Claire laughed softly and touched my arm. "He'll do it." Again, that confidence, like she already owned the answer before I spoke. I looked around the table. Every woman there was watching me. Not aggressively, not openly mocking, but observing. Like this was some weird social experiment about male obedience. And suddenly, I understood something. This was not about the airport. This was performance. Claire enjoyed demonstrating control in front of them. I smiled calmly. "What time?" Claire relaxed immediately. 6:30? The airport trip turned into another disaster. Megan talked the entire drive, mostly about men. Apparently modern men were selfish, emotionally unavailable, immature, intimidated by strong women, lazy, fragile, commitment-phobic, and somehow also too emotional. Quite an impressive species, really. Amazing we survived long enough to invent plumbing. Then she hit me with, "You're different, though." I kept my eyes on the road. "Should I be worried when someone says that?" She laughed. "No, seriously, Claire's lucky." Funny thing about that sentence. People usually say it right before disrespecting you. She says you do everything for her. There it was again. Not, "You guys are good together." Not, "You seem happy." No, "You do everything for her." Like I was a premium household feature, heated seats, Bluetooth, emotional support husband. I shrugged. Marriage is teamwork. Megan smiled at me through the mirror. Most men hate being useful. I almost laughed. Useful? I had no issue being useful. Useful is good. Useful means reliable, capable, dependable. But there is a very thin line between being appreciated and being treated like staff. And Claire was getting dangerously close to crossing it permanently. The real problem started when she interrupted my work. See, I worked in corporate consulting, which meant my job mostly consisted of solving expensive problems created by executives who earned 6 times my salary and somehow still could not operate PowerPoint. Stressful job, good money, long hours, and Claire knew that, especially during client weeks. One Tuesday afternoon, I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with 3 department heads and a client who looked like he personally charged people money for oxygen. My phone buzzed. Claire. I ignored it. 1 minute later, Claire. Again. Then again. 3 calls. Back to back. My stomach tightened immediately because nobody calls 3 times unless something is wrong. I excused myself from the conference room and answered. Claire? You forgot the dry cleaning. I stared at the wall for a full 3 seconds. What? The dry cleaning, she repeated. I need the blue dress tonight. I lowered my voice. I'm in a meeting. And? I actually pulled the phone away from my ear for a second because I genuinely thought I misheard her. And I can't leave right now. Silence. Then the cold tone arrived. So work matters more than helping your wife? Yes. The manipulation package had entered the chat. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Claire, this is important. So am I. You could pick it up yourself. Wrong answer. The temperature of the universe dropped instantly. Wow. That one word carried enough attitude to power a small city. You know what? Forget it. There it was again. The national anthem of emotionally manipulative conversations. I closed my eyes briefly. Inside the conference room, I could see my boss waiting through the glass wall. I should have hung up. I know that now. But when somebody spends years convincing you that saying no makes you selfish, eventually guilt starts reacting faster than logic. I'll handle it after the meeting, I said. Claire exhaled dramatically. Fine. Not thankful. Not understanding. Just irritated that reality had temporarily delayed her convenience. By the time I got home that night, Claire was sitting on the kitchen counter scrolling through her phone while eating strawberries, like she had survived a humanitarian crisis. The dress better be ready, she said without even looking up. I dropped my keys on the counter. Hello to you too. She finally glanced at me. You got it? Yes. Good. That was it. No thank you. No acknowledgement that I had left work late, fought traffic for 40 minutes, and sprinted into the dry cleaner 5 minutes before closing like an exhausted game show contestant competing for marital survival. I leaned against the counter and watched her for a second. You know, I said casually, most people usually thank someone when they do them a favor. Claire frowned slightly, genuinely confused. Why are you acting weird lately? That almost made me laugh. Because there it was again. The magic trick selfish people do when your tolerance starts decreasing. They do not ask, have I been unfair? They ask, why are you changing? Claire popped another strawberry into her mouth. You've been moody for weeks. Moody, I repeated. Yes. Interesting word choice for a man slowly realizing he was being treated like an unpaid assistant with husband benefits. I opened the fridge and grabbed water. Maybe I'm tired. Tired from what? I stared at her. Not because I was shocked, because I honestly did not know if she heard herself anymore. Work, Claire, she shrugged. Everybody works. Nothing humbles a man faster than being told his stress is imaginary by somebody who spent $40 on imported candles that smelled like Nordic forest rain. I took a slow drink of water. Right, she narrowed her eyes. There you go again. Again what? This attitude. I almost asked her what attitude specifically. The attitude where I occasionally behaved like an actual husband instead of her personal assistant with car keys. But I let it go. Because despite everything, I still loved my wife then. That is the ugly truth people never talk about. Love does not disappear the moment somebody starts treating you poorly. Sometimes it stays long after respect leaves the room. The worst moments always happened around her friends. Especially Cindy. Cindy loved testing boundaries the way bored children poke dead insects with sticks. One Saturday evening, Claire invited everyone over for wine and dinner. And by wine and dinner, I mean 6 women drinking expensive alcohol, while I accidentally became event staff inside my own house. I was grilling outside when Claire opened the patio door. "Ethan?" I looked over my shoulder. "Yeah? Can you bring more ice?" "Sure." 5 minutes later, "Ethan, we need more napkins." Then, "Ethan, can you make those little cheese things?" I blinked at her. "The what?" She waved vaguely. "The fancy ones you made before." Amazing instructions. Truly elite communication. Inside, I could hear her friends laughing. Not cruelly. That would almost be easier. No, this was worse. Comfortable laughter. The kind people use when a situation feels completely normal to them. I walked into the kitchen carrying a tray while Claire sat curled on the couch beside Cindy, wine glass in hand like suburban royalty. "There he is," Cindy announced dramatically. "My favorite husband." "Unfortunately," I said, setting the tray down, "I'm already booked." A couple of the women laughed. Claire did not. She pointed toward the counter. "Can you also grab the sauce?" "No, please." Just another command tossed casually into the air. I looked at her for a moment. And for the first time in our marriage, I did not move immediately. Tiny moment. Maybe 2 seconds. But she noticed. Her expression changed slightly. Annoyance. Like her phone suddenly stopped responding correctly. "Ethan?" Cindy smirked into her wine glass. I grabbed the sauce slowly and placed it on the table. Claire relaxed again. Conversation resumed, and then Cindy decided to set the building on fire. "You seriously got lucky with him," she told Claire. "Most men stop trying after marriage." Claire laughed softly. "No, Ethan likes taking care of things." That sentence should have sounded loving. Instead, it sounded like somebody describing a reliable washing machine. Megan leaned forward. "He's very obedient." The women laughed, and Claire smiled. Not uncomfortable, not defensive, proud. That hit harder than the joke itself. Because if somebody mocks your partner, love usually reacts automatically, even playfully, even lightly. But Claire looked pleased, like my obedience reflected well on her. I smiled faintly and looked down at my beer. And that cold feeling returned, stronger this time. A few months earlier, I probably would have ignored it, smiled politely, made another joke, grabbed another tray of food like the world's tallest butler. But something had started changing in me, like a crack spreading through glass. After dinner, the women migrated to the living room with wine while I cleaned the kitchen, mostly because if I left dishes overnight, Claire acted like raccoons would break in and establish political control over the house. I was rinsing plates when I heard Cindy's voice drift from the other room. "I'm serious, Claire. You've got him fully managed." Claire laughed softly. "You have to establish standards early." Another burst of laughter. I dried my hands slowly. Something about the tone bothered me more than the words themselves. It sounded arrogant, like they were discussing training a dog that finally learned not to chew furniture. Tessa chimed in. "No, seriously, mine would never do half this stuff." "That's because you let men get comfortable," Claire replied immediately. I stood still. The kitchen suddenly felt very quiet despite all the voices. Claire continued, "If a man loves you, helping should be automatic." Cindy snorted. "Most men suddenly become blind when dishes appear." "Then don't tolerate lazy men," Claire said simply. I should have walked into the room right then, said something, anything, but I stayed where I was, because part of me still hoped I was misunderstanding things. Then Cindy lowered her voice slightly. You know what I love most? He actually jumps when you call. The room exploded with laughter. Claire laughed too. Not fake polite laughter. Real laughter. The kind that comes from genuine amusement. And for some reason, that hurt worse than insults would have. Then came the sentence that stayed in my head for weeks. Honestly, she said casually, he's kind of like my personal accessory at this point. Very convenient. No, so what? A man should serve his woman. I felt something stop, like respect quietly packed its bags and left through the back door. One of the women laughed so hard she nearly spilled wine. Cindy wheezed, "Oh my God, stop." But Claire kept going. "I'm serious. Need food? Ethan? Need a ride? Ethan? Need help? Ethan." Another round of laughter. And suddenly every little moment from the past year replayed in my head differently. The airport rides, the dry cleaning, the midnight pickups, the commands in front of friends. I stared down at the plate in my hand so hard I almost dropped it. And the worst part? Claire genuinely did not think she was doing anything wrong. I finally walked into the living room carrying empty glasses. The conversation stopped instantly. Claire looked up at me with a bright smile. "Babe, can you grab another bottle?" I looked at her. Still the same woman I once drove across town at 2 a.m. just to bring soup when she had the flu. But now she was looking at me the same way wealthy people look at hotel staff. Friendly, polite, and completely taken for granted. I held her gaze for 2 seconds longer than usual. Something flickered in her expression. Confusion, maybe. Because for the first time in years, I did not instantly move. "I think you've had enough wine for today." Claire blinked. The room went silent so fast you could practically hear everyone's internal panic loading. Cindy lowered her wine glass slowly. "What?" I looked directly at Claire. "I said I think you've had enough wine for today." Not loud, not aggressive, calm, which somehow made it hit harder. Claire stared at me like I had suddenly started speaking fluent Norwegian, because in 7 years together, I almost never pushed back in front of people. Certainly not in front of her friends. Her expression shifted from confusion to irritation in about 3 seconds. "Excuse me?" I set the bottle on the table instead of handing it to her. "You heard me." Nobody moved. Tessa suddenly became extremely interested in a decorative candle near the couch. Megan stared into her drink like the secrets of the universe were floating inside it. And Cindy? Cindy looked thrilled. Because toxic people love conflict as long as it belongs to somebody else. Claire let out a small laugh. The dangerous kind. "Oh, so now you're policing what I drink?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm just tired of listening to you and your friends talk about me like I'm some kind of employee." That landed. Hard. Claire stood from the couch. "You're making this awkward." I almost laughed. "You know what's awkward?" I asked calmly. "Being treated like your personal assistant every time your friends come over?" Claire scoffed. "Wow, you're seriously acting insane right now." "No, I'm acting tired." Then I grabbed my beer from the table. "I'm done for tonight." And I walked upstairs. Behind me, I heard Claire say my name sharply. Not worried, annoyed, like her favorite app had suddenly stopped working after an update. I sat on the edge of the bed upstairs in silence for a long time. And for the first time in years, I let myself think something I had been avoiding for months. Maybe the problem was not that Claire became disrespectful. Maybe the real problem was that I spent years rewarding it. Every time I ignored a rude comment to keep the peace. Every time I canceled my own priorities because guilt worked faster than self-respect. Every time I let her friends laugh at me while pretending it did not bother me. I helped build this version of our marriage. That realization hurt. Downstairs, I could still hear muffled voices and occasional laughter. Claire was probably spinning the situation already. Ethan's stressed. Work's getting to him. He's overreacting. Maybe she even believed it. But something had changed tonight. Tiny crack, but real. And once you finally see disrespect clearly, it becomes impossible to unsee it. The next morning, Claire acted like none of it had happened, which honestly impressed me. Some people train for marathons. Claire trained for emotional avoidance. She stood in the kitchen wearing one of my hoodies, making coffee like the previous night had not ended with me publicly refusing to play obedient husband in front of her wine council. "Morning," she said softly. I looked at her carefully. Morning. No attitude, no tension, no argument, just normal. Too normal. She walked over and kissed my cheek lightly while handing me coffee. "Made it the way you like." That caught me off guard a little, not because it was some grand romantic gesture, because it had been a while since she did something thoughtful without immediately attaching a request to it. I took the mug slowly. "Thanks." She smiled gently, and for a second, I saw the old Claire again. Not the performative version around her friends, not the entitled version barking orders across rooms, the woman I actually married. Over the next couple weeks, she stayed like that, careful, soft, almost unusually sweet. She stopped volunteering me for errands, stopped making comments in front of friends. Even Cindy disappeared for a while, which honestly improved the emotional air quality of the entire house. Claire started cooking again sometimes, nothing fancy. Pasta, breakfast, small things, but intentional. One night she even rubbed my shoulders while I worked on my laptop. "You've been stressed lately," she murmured softly. I almost laughed at the irony. Because now that I had finally stopped acting like a full-time convenience service, suddenly my stress mattered. Still, I wanted to believe her effort was real. That is the problem when you love someone. Hope survives longer than logic. One Friday night, we sat together on the couch, watching some terrible reality dating show, where emotionally unstable strangers screamed at each other beside swimming pools worth more than my annual salary. Claire rested her head against my shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "I think we've both been tense lately." Diplomatic. Very diplomatic. Translation: let us acknowledge the discomfort without discussing the cause. "Mm-hmm," I replied. She traced circles against my arm absent-mindedly. "I don't like fighting with you." That part at least sounded genuine. I looked down at her. "Then don't treat me like I work for you." I said stupid things. I nodded once, and for a while, things actually improved. Or at least appeared to. She became affectionate again, more attentive, more respectful. When she asked for things, she actually asked, not commanded. Then came the presentation week, and with it, the phone call that ended our marriage. That Monday felt important the second I woke up. Like the air itself knew something big was coming. I got to the office before 8, carrying enough coffee to keep a small army awake for 3 days. The presentation was at 11. National client, multi-million-dollar account, months of negotiations. If this went well, my career changed permanently. Even Richard looked nervous, which was concerning because my boss normally spoke like a man who negotiated contracts during natural disasters for fun. "You ready?" he asked while we set up the conference room. "Yeah." "You sure?" "No," I admitted. That actually made him laugh. Good answer. By 10:30, the room was filling with executives, assistants, department heads, and one client representative who looked like he personally fired people recreationally. I was focused, calm, sharp. The kind of focused where your brain starts operating faster than normal. Then my phone buzzed. Claire. I declined the call immediately. 30 seconds later, again. My stomach tightened. Claire knew about the presentation, which meant if she was calling repeatedly, something had to be wrong. Accident, emergency, hospital. Every horrible possibility hit my brain instantly because fear moves faster than logic when you love someone. I excused myself from the room and answered quietly. "Claire?" Her voice came fast. "Babe, I need help." Immediate panic. "What happened?" "I'm at Ridgeway Plaza." That confused me instantly. "The mall? Are you okay?" "Yes, but I really need you to come." My pulse slowed slightly. "What's wrong?" I'll explain when you get here. Bad sentence. Very bad sentence. I leaned against the hallway wall. Claire, I'm about to start the presentation. I know, but this is important. Her voice sounded tense enough that my brain kept supplying worst-case scenarios anyway. Maybe somebody followed her. Maybe she got hurt and was downplaying it. Are you safe right now? I asked immediately. Yes. Then tell me what happened. A pause. I just need you here. I looked through the glass wall into the conference room. Richard was talking to the clients. People were opening laptops. My presentation was literally loaded onto the screen. Claire, please. That word got me. Because despite everything, I still loved her. And love makes intelligent people behave like absolute idiots sometimes. I'm coming, I said finally. The relief in her voice was instant. Thank you. I hung up and walked back into the conference room. Richard looked up immediately. You good? I hesitated. That hesitation probably cost me my future. There's an emergency with my wife. His expression changed instantly. Concern. Real concern. Jesus, go. I can still... Ethan, go. The client representatives were already watching. I grabbed my jacket, apologized quickly, and left. The drive across the city felt endless. Traffic. Red lights. Every slow driver in America apparently united that morning with one shared mission: destroy my mental stability. I called Claire twice on the way. No answer. Now my anxiety was getting worse again. By the time I reached Ridgeway Plaza, my heart was pounding hard enough to crack ribs. I parked illegally near the entrance and almost jogged across the lot searching for her. Then I saw her, standing outside the mall, perfectly fine, holding shopping bags, designer shopping bags. Claire spotted me and waved casually, like we were meeting for lunch. I slowed to a stop in front of her, confused. What happened? Claire frowned slightly. My feet hurt. I stared at her. What? She shifted the bags higher on her arm. I didn't want to take a taxi alone with all this stuff. My brain genuinely stopped processing language for a second. You called me out of work. Claire blinked. Well, yeah. Because you didn't want a taxi? She looked irritated already. Why are you saying it like that? Claire, I left the biggest meeting of my career. You said it was fine. No, I said slowly. I said I thought something happened to you. Well, something did happen. I needed help. I looked at the shopping bags, then at her, then back at the bags again. One of them literally contained candles. My career was currently bleeding to death in a conference room because Bath & Body Works apparently launched a seasonal collection. You couldn't call a car? I didn't want strangers touching my bags. I looked at her for a long moment. Claire adjusted one of the shopping bags again and frowned at me. Can we go already? I opened the trunk silently. Claire started loading bags inside while talking casually. You would not believe how insane the parking was today. I said nothing. Also, I found those candles you liked last winter. She finally noticed the silence and looked over. What? I leaned against the car slowly. You really thought this was an emergency? It was important to me. Claire crossed her arms slightly. You're acting like I asked you to donate a kidney. I stared at her. No, you asked me to risk my career because you didn't want to sit in a taxi. Her expression hardened immediately. Wow, dramatic. Then my phone rang. Richard. I answered immediately. Richard. His voice was controlled. Too controlled. You coming back? I looked at Claire. At this point? Richard continued. Don't bother. That sentence landed like a brick. I closed my eyes briefly. How bad? A pause. The client walked. My stomach dropped anyway, even though I already knew. They weren't willing to reschedule. I pressed fingers against my forehead. Richard exhaled heavily. We'll talk tomorrow. The call ended, just like that. Months of work. Gone. I stood there holding my phone while traffic rolled past, and somebody nearby laughed at something completely unrelated to the collapse of my professional future. Claire spoke carefully this time. "Is everything okay?" I turned slowly toward her, and for the first time in years, I genuinely did not recognize my wife. "You cannot seriously ask me that." Her face tightened immediately. "I thought you could step out for an hour." Claire stepped closer slightly. "Ethan, no. This is the last drop of my patience. Get in the car. I will take you home, and I hope I never see you again in my life." The drive home was quiet. Claire tried talking twice. When we got home, she carried the shopping bags inside while I stood near the doorway for a few seconds, just looking around the house. Claire finally looked at me nervously. "Ethan," I interrupted her quietly, "I think you should start packing." That got her attention immediately. At first, she thought I was bluffing. "Wait, what?" "I'm serious." Eventually, I asked for divorce. Claire cried harder that day than I had ever seen in my life. But by then, something inside me was already gone. The divorce finalized about 2 months later. Work never fully recovered after the lost client. Richard kept me at the company, but the promotion disappeared, and things between us stayed professionally colder after that. Fair or unfair, disappearing before the biggest presentation of the year became part of my reputation. Claire moved into an apartment across the city. We barely spoke after the paperwork was done. At first, living alone felt strange, quiet in a way that almost hurt. I kept expecting someone to ask me for something every 5 minutes. It took time to realize I no longer had to organize my entire existence around another person's comfort. Little by little, life stabilized. And for the first time in years, I learned how peaceful life feels when love is not constantly tied to obligation. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.